Yes. What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Veterans Minimum. It is Monday. Today, I have a very special guest. My guy all the way from... Where are you at nowadays?
New Britain, Connecticut.
Connecticut. Look at you, yo.
Brooklyn, born and raised.
Brooklyn, born and raised, baby. BK. Yo, you saw this?
Mm-hmm.
You like it?
Yeah, I do.
Scale of 1 to 10, how aroused are you looking at that?
I like the whole wall, actually.
You like the setup?
Yeah.
Give me.
I'm not a huge wrestling guy, but I can appreciate it.
Listen, you better watch your tone when
No,
you talk
listen,
about him.
I just said I can appreciate it.
All right, just because we're best friends doesn't mean that
No,
you
no,
can just
no,
slander
no,
my goat.
No. I'm not slandering him at all.
Jesse Goldberger in the building. My guy, one of my close friends from Buffalo State boys. We've been friends for how long now? 2009 is when we met?
Yeah, been a while.
I've had you on the podcast before.
Mm-hmm.
Much different setup than we did then.
Yes, completely different. Not in this building, right?
No. We're at my buddy's house.
Gotcha.
We did it on his couch.
Yeah.
Sort of like a casting couch, except we all kept our pants on.
There you go.
Jesse is...
That's where the similarities end.
Yeah, pretty much. Dude, tell the people a little bit about like what you do. For those that didn't listen to the podcast back, it was about dude, that was like last July.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Holy fuck.
Before COVID.
How things have changed, right?
Yeah, crazy.
Dude. So tell the people a little bit about what you do.
I coach football at Central Connecticut State University, which is a D1 AA school.
All right.
I used to coach DBs. Now I'm coaching running backs. So, and obviously since March, things have been a little different. Our whole season got canceled.
So nothing at all. Didn't even show up for camp?
No. We had practice.
Okay.
The kids got to lift. Now, it didn't start when it was supposed to. We had practice. We had lift. We got some stuff done, but there were 0 games.
So what's the point of that?
What's the point of...
Why even lift? When did you guys know that the season wasn't going to happen?
Well, I think... I can't remember the exact date, but, I remember in the summer... I was actually up in Rochester visiting one of our friends. So I think
shouts to Muscles, man. Nick as well. He's
also been on this podcast.
Yeah, I had him call in before. That's who. So just to paint the picture, my close friends from Buffalo, Jesse being one, my 2 college roommates, Jeff and Muhammad, and Nick Mancuso also just opened up a gym up in Rochester too, and
Elevate. Right.
Elevate, yeah. And I went to Rochester around May last year for UFC card.
Yeah.
And it was dope. Just like college, bro. Just fucking pounding beers.
Yeah.
Oh, frat star lifestyle.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he's a good dude, man.
Good dude.
So
good dude.
that was like our little clique up in Buffalo. But I'd say it was more me, you, and Muscles was like the trio.
Yep.
So Let's go back to the season. When you guys, I just wanted to paint the picture for everybody. And you don't want to put your headphones on?
Do I need to?
When it's 1v1 like this, you don't really need to. I do it so that I make sure that the sound is good, but you don't have to if you don't want. Usually when you have more than one other voice, it's better for the host to have the headphones on. This way I can navigate, Mike isn't talking louder than Jesse, so everything's on. So you don't need to. You'll see, there's a lot of times I'll get heat from some fans. They'll be like, "Yo, what happened to your headphones?" Like every 20 minutes or so, I stop the cameras, and then I'll fire them up again. And for the most part, what happens is I'll forget to put the headphones back on because you don't need to. Like I know the levels are sound, and also post. Jesse, I'm a professional now, so post production I could do.
I never doubted you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
So let's go back to. When did you guys find out about the season being canceled?
I don't remember the exact date, but
rough. I don't need the exact date.
Things were on hold, right? So usually all these players show up in the beginning of July. Mm-hmm. By the beginning of July, they spend a month with our strength and conditioning coach, lifting, running, getting prepared. They had just spent the whole spring doing the same thing. They're home for a couple weeks, and they have to show up in July. A lot of them are there in June. I think like the middle of June, it was held back and that they weren't going to come until later in July. Basically, it kept on going later and later, and we kind of kept on giving them hope, like, hey, hopefully we'll get, 8 games in, 6 games in, whatever. And eventually, maybe beginning of September, it was just completely canceled. And they said they were going to come back to it October 1st, and we didn't end up playing any games. So it's been weird. And it's affected everything, and we'll get into the whole, recruiting talk. But from a recruiting perspective, scholarships, so all these kids have another year, right? And
so that you beat me to it. I was going to say, what happens to the kid who was going into his last year of eligibility? Does it just roll over? Or?
It does. It does. Mm-hmm. But now that begs the question, what happens to the kid that now doesn't have a shot to go to college because some senior is now in his spot, right? He was supposed to graduate, and this isn't a Central Connecticut problem. This is a huge problem, yeah.
Right, which is why I wanted to pick your brain about this kind of topic and conversation, because this isn't just a D1AA thing. I think a lot of schools that have had cancellations or games lost or been affected by COVID, it brings up a very intriguing conversation.
Yes, it does. And it's hard. And honestly, like I've talked about this with multiple people in football, out of football. Like there's no easy answer. You know what I mean? There's no simple solution. You are going to have kids who are going to the high school kids are gonna. This is not going to do them well because there's just going to be less spots available, and that's just the reality. And it's true at every level. Now I don't know how the USC's and Ohio State's, I don't know how they deal with it. But, it's just, it's hard. And then you get into the whole thing with the transfer portal, right?
What is that?
The transfer portal is, so they just came out with a rule that usually when you transfer, you go in this portal, okay? And if you're Division I, believe, if you transfer, you have to sit a year. Not if you graduate and transfer. If you're a freshman, you don't like where you are, you transfer, you have to sit a year.
So if I'm at Ohio State and I want to transfer to LSU like Joe Burrow did,
right,
I have to sit a year.
Right. Yeah, you have to sit a year.
Is that what he did?
No, because I think he graduated. And sometimes they write you a waiver. There are waivers to get out of it.
There's some loopholes.
Yes. How the loopholes work,
well, that's why they're loopholes.
Right. Now you're immediately eligible, at least for this year. So it's basically like turning into free agency. Well, here's the problem. There's 800 kids on the transfer portal or something like that, right? There's a crazy number of kids on the transfer portal. Most of these rosters, because of all these seniors who are coming back, are filled or almost filled. There aren't a ton of spots available. That's another issue that's going to pop up. Kids are going to be without a home. So maybe if you're good enough, your school takes you back. Or if they value you enough, they take you back. If they don't, you put yourself on the transfer portal. They don't have to. There are going to be some tough conversations.
Damn.
And it's we can have a whole nother, that's a whole other conversation is this transfer portal thing good?
Has this transfer portal been around for?
I think like 3 or 4 years. That's it. It started when
And that's at all levels of college?
I believe so. Mm-hmm. I believe so. Well, Division III, there are no scholarships. I don't know if they really need
Right,
it.
yeah.
But
you get like grants and shit like that, which like I got a grant to go to Buff State. It was
like,
it was like $1,000 thing. Congrats,
right.
I paid for my books that I didn't read anyway.
Could have spent it on something else.
Could have, yeah. $1,000 would have got me through the whole semester of pounding beers.
There you go.
See how I have my priorities in check?
You do. You always did. So did I. But yeah, it's just. I mean, it's. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what's gonna happen with. Listen. Obviously, there's gonna be plenty of high school kids who have spots, but there are less spots. That's just the fact. Mm-hmm. So, like me, I recruit New York City. I've barely offered anybody because we can't. There's no room.
Because you don't know what's leaving, what's coming back. In order for you to say, oh, you know what, I need a safety. I need a will linebacker of some kind.
And the last thing you want to do is offer a kid and take it back. I mean, that sucks.
Does that ruin your reputation?
Doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends who you are. But yeah, I wouldn't want to do it. I had a situation, and I won't name names, but I had a situation where I offered a kid from a school, and time kind of went on, and we had taken somebody else, and it was my fault because I didn't really give. Now, like 6 months had passed. It was my fault because I didn't give the kid a timeline, and this was like 2 or 3 years ago. But our coach kind of said to me hey, this is we offered the kid a while ago. Their coach was upset. I mean, it's just not. It's something you want to avoid. So, that's the only time I've ever been in a situation like that. And you learn. Listen, now I tell the kid hey, we're offering you. You have this amount of time. Here's what the offer is. So.
How has COVID changed how you go about recruiting? Did you even do any recruiting?
Well, first of all, so there's no in-person recruiting, right? So everything is online and on the phone. Usually in the spring, you're and even in the fall on bye weeks, you're down seeing kids. You go to high schools, everything's online. Did we do recruiting? Yes. Is it different? And I think it depends on the way. So this signing day period just passed, right? Some schools in our conference almost signed a full class. Some schools signed 2 or 3 kids. We signed 0 kids. It's just the strategy and the way you want to go about it. So for us, it's changed drastically because we are going to take people late now because of COVID. It kind of depends on what the head coach wants to do. But has it changed it? 100%. It has to. So if you're a team that, I mean, it doesn't really matter at what level, but if you're a team who has not been so successful, right, and you want to get rid of some of those seniors, you push them out the door, right, because you can. If you're a team that has been successful, well, most of our seniors we want to keep. I mean, there's no reason to get rid of these kids. They've won 2 championships in the last 3 years. They're good players. They're good kids. I mean, we're not gonna get rid of them. So that leaves one less spot for a high school senior coming in.
What are the ramifications of you sort of lessening your recruiting class for 2021 down the road?
I think that's to be determined.
How good of a question is that?
It's a good question,
Thank
and
you,
it's
sir.
one that I don't know the answer to. The one thing
Kind
I'll
of
tell
stumped
you
you there for a little bit.
The one thing I'll tell you is in terms of balance, the freshman class this year are freshmen next year. So it's not like, yes, we're missing a class, but we're not really missing a class.
And also, it's not that it's just your school that's going through it.
No, it's everybody.
So everybody.
It's
so there is that kind of levels the playing field.
Yeah. But I feel bad for the high school senior. That's who I kind of feel. That's who I kind of feel for. It's not really us. It's the high school senior who's trying to get recruited. It's hard enough as it is. There's limited spots as it is, and now you throw this into it. There's going to be a lot of kids who just aren't going to get what they deserve.
Somewhat on topic, somewhat off topic. Well, what is the hardest position to recruit for?
I'd say quarterback.
All right, don't give me quarterback. Just because quarterback is like the hardest thing to do for anything.
I think it depends.
Leave out intangibles. Leave out leadership and the want to win and desire to get better. I'm talking about just like raw position. Which one is the hardest one to recruit a kid to?
So it's funny. I think depending on who you'd ask, you'd get different answers. To me, just like watching tape and watching film, like receivers to me kind of all look the same, and I don't know why. I don't know why that is, but that's something I've always struggled with. There's certain things in every position that you look for, right? So with DBs, it's speed, it's hips, it's ability to transition, right? If you're looking at an old lineman, it's does he move people off the ball? Can he get out of his stance? Is he nasty? Like there's certain things in every position that you look for. The reason I said quarterbacks is because of all the intangibles, all the off the field stuff. The fact that position is probably just as mental as it is physical. So Yeah, I've always had a problem with receivers, and I'm not sure. Listen, you give me one kid who's really good, and you give me one kid who sucks. It's easy, right?
Right.
But to differentiate between, if you're gonna make a list between 1 and 2, they just, to me, I've always had a problem with that position, and I don't really know why.
That's interesting, right? Because I feel like the wide receiver also has so many different. It's a very unique position. I've always said this about wide receiver. I totally understand why a wide receiver is a quote unquote diva. Right? When you break the huddle, you're the first one to leave your huddle.
Right.
You're the furthest away from the ball. Your success is determined solely on another 2 units.
Yes.
The quarterback and the offensive line.
Right.
So I get it when Odell Beckham Jr. is like, yo, man, I want the ball. And he has 1 catch for 8 yards. And he's open all the time. So I get that. I think with wide receiver, it's such a unique position because some guys are better on the outside as X and Y wide receivers. Some guys are better as slot wide receivers. Some guys can't block for shit. Some guys are tremendous blockers, and that's what gets them on the field. So I can see what you mean by that. But for the most part, like route running, I guess, is one. If a guy is a really good route runner, he could look faster than he really is. Like you'll see some guys who are 4.68 guys, but you watch them and you're like, yo, how is he not a 4.3 guy? It's because his routes are so crisp in and out.
And that's the, that's kind of the other thing, right? Is that raw speed doesn't always.
You can't teach that too.
You can't. You can work on it. But that raw speed doesn't always translate. Mm-hmm. The fastest guy isn't always the best player. So, the ability, like with receivers, right? Ability to sink your hips, ability to catch the ball. Can he navigate space? Some guys just find a way to get open, right? You hear it all the time. You hear them talk about it in the NFL. It's true. It's a skill. They can navigate zones, and they have a knack for it. And that's something you have to try to find.
I've always been fascinated by this question, and I'm not sure if you'll know the answer to this, but how often does a wide receiver break off his route to get open? So what I mean by that is, I remember when I was in college and I would go I was a kicker. So they would tell me, yo, go to whatever room you want to go into. And, we didn't have a special teams room.
Right.
We just had offense and defense. So
right.
I would always go with the offensive guys. Plus, some of my closer friends would be on the offense. So I just remember how they really drill in the 12-yard hook. Mm-hmm. And it has to be at 12 yards.
Yeah.
How often is that broken off to, I couldn't get the DB to bite, so I made it a 16-yard hook? Or he was playing so off that I cut it to 8. How often does that happen?
I don't know. I don't know if there's a percentage. How often are depths off? Probably all the time, right? You hear like he's got to be deeper, he's got to be shallower. The bigger thing happens with cutoff routes. Well, there's 2 things. One, there are option routes, right? There's if the corner is pressed, you're going to run vertical, and if he's not, you're going to run it out. And then there's scramble rules, right? So quarterback takes off scrambling, the
underneath guys turn upfield, and then
right. You hear the expression mailbox, right? Put your hand up if you're open.
Ooh, I never heard that one.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I think the question of how often, if you're asking like how often do they just completely break off their route, I don't think it's very often. If it's how often is the depth a little off, that probably happens all the time.
Interesting. Yeah, I've always been fascinated. You see guys running a route and then the coverage is just completely blown. So when there's like a blown coverage, say the safety isn't over the top and a corner's in the flats, and then, maybe he's supposed to run a slant, but he just recognized that he just, what you say, mailbox?
Yeah.
He does the mailbox thing. And then, so like, I've always been curious about that one.
I don't, that probably happens from time to time. I don't think it's, I don't know what the number would be, to be honest with you. I don't think it's all the time.
Yeah, I also figure you wouldn't give me an exact number. You'd give me I just wanted to know if it does happen, if it's a common
I'm sure
thing.
It does happen. Yeah. I'm sure it does happen. How common is it? I'll be completely honest with you, I really don't have an answer. Usually if a coverage is completely blown, I mean, somebody's going to be open anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So, Either they found it pre-snap and they exposed it, or yeah, you do have that, like a corner slips or something. Well, go run. You know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. That would be an interesting thing to look up because I really don't know.